All right, once again, good morning. It's good to see everybody. And if you have been here the last couple of days, Friday night through Saturday, you already know Ronny Simon, an Israeli tour guide who was born and raised in Israel, lives there currently. He's out in the States a lot because things are a little tense out there. So pray for Israel. But I've known Ronny for close to 40 years. He's been a tour guide all that time. And we're going to try to get him to come out and do some other seminars in the months ahead. But he's promised to come back this morning and give us an update on what's happening in Israel. Not the kind you're going to get from CNN, MSNBC, or even Fox News. This is an update from somebody who lives in the country, was a member of the IDF for years, obviously, and he's going to give us the truth. And you can check, he encourages you to check it out so that you don't take his word for it. So I just want to give him a warm Calvary welcome. Ronny, come on up here.
Thank you, Pastor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I see some familiar faces in the house. I need to apologize for my accent. For those of you that are not used to that, you'll get used to that. You don't have a choice. Thank you, Pastor, for the opportunity to be here and share Israel with friends of Israel. It's not an easy message that you're going to hear from me. Not easy for me to deliver. It won't be easy for you to understand. And definitely not the kind of message that you are exposed to in a church Sunday morning service. This message is full of violence. This message is full of bloodshed. This message is maybe the story of the state of Israel, which is located in the very heart of a very tough neighborhood, which is basically Arab Muslim countries that all they want is to see our destruction. As Pastor Phil had mentioned, what I'm going to share with you will be from the Israeli perspective. I'll try to be as objective as I can. I cannot be totally objective. And therefore, don't trust a word that I'm saying. You go and check. You owe it to yourselves. Intelligent human beings want to make a stand about something. At least you need to know what is it that you're standing for. The combination of zeal and ignorance is a devastating one, and that's what we see in so many universities and organizations around the world. People are willing to fight for something they know absolutely nothing about. You check with most students in the prestigious Ivy League universities around the States, which is the river and which is the sea that they chant all the time, from the river to the sea. Most of them don't have a clue. So my plan is to try to do some cleanup. There's so much deception out there, so much disinformation out there, that even friends of Israel ask me, we are confused. Give us some tools to understand what is going on so we can make a stand for Israel. That's part of the problem. Everybody is confused, and confusion is a plan. Confusion is a plan. The more you add to a certain story, the more you fortify a certain narrative, it makes sure that people are departing from the facts. People will not know what they're arguing for. It is indeed part of the plan. So confusion is a problem. Add to that AI, and you're totally lost. You cannot trust absolutely nothing. And if this problem is between you and me, that's not a problem. Think about world leaders that are confused, not understanding what is going on. So my plan is not to add to the propaganda out there. For that reason, I keep telling you, I cannot be totally objective. You go and study, and all the facts I'm going to bring to you, don't trust me, all right? You go and check it for yourselves. At least you know that you're standing on solid ground. My plan, therefore, is education. And I'm going to do that in about 55 minutes or so. And if you just try to zoom in today to understand what is going on, you don't have a chance to understand any of it. And therefore, we need to start with some history. And then we go to the turning points. I'm going to focus on the Israeli-Palestinian story, although it's not limited to that, not anymore. We speak about the global conflict. Israel, as we speak, is attacked from Yemen and from Iraq and from Iran and from Lebanon, and some cities in the West Bank are not quiet. The focus goes to Gaza, but Gaza is not the only problem that we are facing. Another side track to take, which will be the main track in just a minute. We thought that this is a war between two people. All the problem is land for peace. We'll try to find a reasonable solution which will serve everybody. We were wrong in that assumption. It is a war of religion. It was, it is, and it will be. And therefore, when you read the charter of Hamas that speaks about world jihad, it has nothing to do with the Palestinian state. It has nothing to do with the two-state solution. Is one religion is engaged in a brutal war against not just the Jews, but Christians as well. And make no mistakes, it's not limited to the Middle East. It is indeed a global war. Israel was, in a way, a drone came from Yemen a couple of days ago. Yemen is about 1,200 miles away from Israel. We don't share a border. We never had a conflict. What is the problem of Yemen or Iran, for that matter, with Israel? Nobody asked the question, right? The Iranians can't even say that we are fighting in behalf of the Arab world. They are not Arabs, they are Farsis by their ethnicity, so it's not an issue of national solidarity. In one word, religion. Islam is the issue. I'm not a theologian. I'm not going to speak against Islam as a religion. I just don't know enough. But I don't have to. It's enough to see what people are willing to do to people in behalf of their religion. And before the war in Gaza started 9 months ago, the Middle East was in turmoil. Muslims were butchering Muslims over dominating Islam. The civil war in Syria and in Libya and in Lebanon and everywhere, we're not part of it. And therefore we speak about something which is much bigger than a limited geographical conflict. We speak about something that the whole world is involved one way or the other. I'll focus on Gaza, but through that engagement over there, that will teach you quite a lot about the region as well. We'll speak about the recent war in Gaza, but we need to go back to history to understand how did we get to that position. The most painful issue that we are facing, and no country in the world ever faced the same kind of a problem, is hostages. About 120 men, women, children, babies are kept in the tunnels of Hamas in Gaza. Nobody has any information about them whatsoever. It is the Red Cross's basically mission to go and check and give us some information. They won't do it. But they keep telling us that we better treat the people of Hamas that we have in our prisons well, because we need to go by a certain protocol. You hear some bitterness from my side? Yes, you will, because the whole world is viewing that, including international organizations. Israel is the one that has to answer questions. Hamas, well, what can you expect from them? Just a militia of terrorists. And therefore we are missing civilians, men, women, children, witnessing their families being beheaded and butchered, and the daughters raped, were taken from their homes, civilians into Gaza. And not just by Hamas terrorists, by simple Gazans. They took the opportunity. The border was open for a while. Simple people equipped with a kitchen knife came inside to kill and to slaughter, and everything is recorded. They were proud enough to show the whole world how brave and how strong are the Muslim warriors. I'm being sarcastic, as you understand. We intercepted a phone call of a young Hamas terrorist calling his family, calling his father, using a cell phone that he took from an Israeli woman that he raped and murdered. And you should hear this conversation. Dad, I just killed 6 Jews. And the father is in tears. Keep butchering my son. You're a Muslim hero. Who speaks like that? Who educates people like that? We speak about education. We speak about the way of life, something that we in the Western society don't have a chance to understand, which is a good thing. But we need to deal with an issue that mentally we're not capable to fully understand. So to view the Middle East from a distance with some concern, you don't have an idea. And once that goes up to the level of leaders that do not understand that kind of spirit, the whole world is in a problem. So we do speak about a very painful issue, very challenging times in Israel. No country in the world ever had to deal that kind of warfare. And again, 9 months into it, 290 days into it, it's not done yet. Israel is strong enough to just wipe Gaza out of the surface of the planet. Just a minute now. There are innocent civilians over there. We want to be careful. We want to go after the targets. Some people saw it as weakness. If this militia is surviving for 9 months, the mighty Israeli army, Israel is not that strong as they say. They do not understand our moral values. We are very careful not to nuke Gaza and not to just bomb Gaza. We want to protect civilians if possible, but this kind of warfare, no army in the world knows how to do. Not even the US in Mosul, which is maybe the closest one to what we witness in Gaza. So we are learning, the world is watching, That's just part of a situation that we're experiencing over the last 9 months or so. Look at this slide over there. It looks like fireworks on the 4th of July, huh? Well, not quite so. You see a barrage of rockets fired from Gaza into Israel's territory, and the Iron Dome, which is great technology, is intercepting most of these 94% of success, which is quite good. No army in the world has that capability. So yes, we're kind of protected, but you do understand the challenges that we are facing. And therefore, to understand better what happens today, we need to go back about 80 years or so and just follow the turning points one after the other. Are you still with me? Some of you look at me in the face of horror. Yes, I told you, it's not a pleasant message, but it's something that we all need to understand. Well, here we go. The Gaza Strip, geographically, a very small area. Maybe the most crowded place in the Western world, definitely, 2.2 million people who live there, many of whom are refugees who fled from Israel in the war of 1948. We'll get to that in just a minute. So Gaza is this place. Maybe the most fast-growing population in the world is the population in Gaza. I'm saying that because the world is accusing Israel that we committed genocide in Gaza. If we plan to do that, we don't do a good job. The population always grows in Gaza. And by the way, we built the hospitals and we established the clinics and we made life in Gaza decent, not anybody else. So to say that Israel is planning to get rid of the Palestinians, that's absolutely not. That's propaganda. All right? Please go and check me out. Gaza was for 19 years in Egyptian hands. The lifespan of the people was 46 years, under Israel 76. Infant mortality in Gaza under Egypt was 44 to 1,000, the highest in the world. Now it's down to 3. We did that. So Israel doesn't have a plan to kill all Gazans and to kill all civilians. That's absolutely ridiculous to even mention that. We open our borders to let them come and work in Israel, to support for their families, something the Arab world refused to do. So this accusation is really not only ridiculous, and many people buy that because people do not know the facts. The facts are easy to check and easy to confirm. I challenge you, go and check the facts. So Gaza is a very unusual area, so to speak, with the intensity of population, 50% of unemployment. Why would that be? I mean, the whole world donated money for the Palestinians to build an economy and to build a state and to build an infrastructure. Who cares about that? Every dollar was invested in building rockets and in digging tunnels. If Israel had not opened the borders and let them come and work in Israel, unemployment would be more than 80%. All right, so these are facts which are important to keep in mind. And by the way, those people that came to work in Israel, they led the attack on the Israeli communities in October 7th of 2023. They spied on us. We let them in. We provided for the families something their own government is not doing. That's it. No more in the future Palestinians will find jobs in Israel. It's their problem. We've been sympathetic. We try to help. We are learning. Takes a while, but we are learning. And therefore, this will be some data about the Gaza area. And let's start the story. And this chart will come up and down every now and then. We are going to start before 1949 because it's important to understand how we got to this situation that we are facing today. I'm taking you back now to 1947. That's where the story begins, basically. By the way, you will not find the term Palestinian people or Palestinian state until about 50 years ago. Nobody in the world believed there is such a nation, not even people that call themselves Palestinians today. Once again, I challenge you, go to the literature and you show me one place that anybody speaks about Palestinian people. There was never a place called Palestine as an independent state. There is no such place even today, by the way. So people can speak about the Palestinian state. It's like speaking about Narnia. There is no Palestinian state. There was the Palestinian autonomy, the Palestinian militias. They don't have a currency. They don't have passports. It's not really a nation. The world treating them as one. They have a position in the United Nations, by the way, almost like a full member. Why give them that position? What about the Kurds, by the way? 30 million ethnicity, a nation. Why doesn't the world recognize a Kurdish state like Kurdistan? What about Tibet? How can the world never Tibet? Or Taiwan, for that matter? So by the world watching and views everything, it has, I'm sorry to say, an anti-Semitic component. in the way the things are done. And when Israel is engaged, the Palestinians are favored by the world for no good reason, I have to say. But again, that will be the world's problem. So let's start with 1947. 30 years of British mandates are about to come to an end. Palestine was in the hands of the British since after the First World War. After the Second World War, Great Britain won the war but lost the empire. They're going back home. They evacuate the forces from India, Sri Lanka, and from Palestine as well. And they knew that if they leave the area behind as it was, it will lead to a bloodbath because two people fought for the land, basically, the local Jews and the local Arabs. And therefore, Great Britain, in good faith, I have to say, decided the United Nations should deal with the problem. And the UN sent a team of 11 members over to try to bring the leaders to the table. Arab leaders, Jewish leaders tried to find a solution. Problem was that the Arab leaders refused to even consider such a meeting because their position was and is Israel or Palestine, the Jews have no rights in it, it should be Muslim territory, and therefore we're not negotiating. From the Jewish side, these were the years after the Holocaust, and whatever the world was willing to consider as a Jewish homeland, we could not decline. And therefore the idea that we're going to have some kind of an agreement was in vain. And with much frustration, one has to say the team of 11 members came to the conclusion that without decent negotiations, the only way to bring that conflict to an end after Britain leaves the area is to present a plan that will speak about partition. We are going to take this land between the river and the sea, at least you should know, the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. We're going to divide it to two national homelands, one for the Jews and one for the Arabs. Jerusalem, because it's so significant, will be an international city and not the capital of any of the new entities. So by that resolution that the United Nations General Assembly voted for on the 29th of November 1947, two countries were born, one for the Jews, one for the Arabs. If I had asked you how come there was no Palestinian state until this very day, the UN said very clearly, two countries for two people. And you don't know your history, your answer will be because you, the Jews, conquered Palestinian territory, and for that reason, there is no Palestine until this very day. You're wrong. Right after the British mandate terminated, that was May 14th of 1948, which is Israel's Day of Independence, Israel was invaded overnight by 7 Arab armies. They came to help the local Arabs. They had to make sure that there was no Jewish state ever. We are going to throw the Jews into the ocean. Well, we prevailed. And as you all know, there is a Jewish state. The question is, how come there is no Palestine? Well, and these are facts, all right? I'm not being biased, not yet. I'll give you a side when I'm being biased. These are facts, and please go and check. The army of Jordan under King Abdullah I sent its army into Palestine's territory to help the Palestinians. After the war was over, part of the land that was allocated to a Palestinian state was occupied by the Jordanian army. And the king of Jordan said, you know what, this is fine land. I like it here. My country and kingdom is a desert. The West Bank is much nicer. I'm staying. The Egyptian army also came to help their brothers into the Gaza area. And after the war was over, they decided to stay. And therefore, some of the land that was allocated as a Palestinian state was in the hands of the Arab countries. Had the king of Jordan pulled his forces out of the West Bank, there will be a Palestinian state today. Had the Egyptian army pulled back to Gaza and handed it over to the Palestinians, there would be a Palestinian state today. The reason why there was no Palestine, and never was, by the way, there is no such entity, at least officially, is that the land that was occupied by the Arab countries, they took it from them, stole it from them. You use the term that you like. So the West Bank became to be part of Jordan, and you see the right-hand side of the map over there. The West Bank, by the way, is the heartland of biblical Israel, the land of Judea and Samaria. Everything you read about in the Old Testament about the Jewish kingdoms and about prophets took place in an area that some people in the world believe the Jews have no rights in it whatsoever. That's the West Bank. The West Bank of what? River Jordan. So it was a land that was allocated to the Palestinians, simply taken by the Jordanians. Same in Gaza. So in 1948, only one state was born. The other one was never born, but not because of Israel, please understand. If the king of Jordan had pulled back his forces and the Egyptians, there would be a Palestinian state. The conflict would be on a totally different level. So that's where it leaves us with the Palestinian issue, so to speak. Many refugees fled during the war. It's a very unpleasant outcome of every war. And they went to Gaza, they went to places in the West Bank, and that's what makes the population in the Gaza area today, almost everybody, 85%, will be people that will be called refugees. By the way, 80 years ago, by international law, you cannot inherit your position as refugee. It holds on for 1 generation. The UN made an exception with the Palestinians. You can pass that position to your children and children, which means UNRWA, the agency that takes care about it, is supposed to sustain you forever. So why find a job? Why invest in education? The money you get from the world is more than the salary that you can make if you live in Arab countries. Why leave this position of refugee? It serves you so well. By the way, it never happened anywhere on the planet. After the Second World War, 50 million refugees wandered through Europe. They're no longer refugees. Everybody find a home, find a job, find a family, start all over again. You can only hold this position for 1 generation. That's the exception made by the UN. If you're Palestinian, that position you can keep forever. Why make the exception? I don't have an answer for you. And I hate to keep throwing in anti-Semitism all the time, but maybe it's part of it. So now we have a new in the Middle East, and Gaza, and we'll speak about Gaza predominantly, is in the hands of the Egyptians. The Egyptians invested in Gaza nothing, zero. The people in Gaza were locked in refugee camps. They could not travel to Egypt. They did not have decent education. The Egyptians never let UNRWA to be fully engaged and try to improve their conditions. Absolutely nothing. No Medicare, absolutely nothing. With one exception. They were willing to train the local refugees so they can carry out terror attacks in Israel's territory. And that was the case in the Gaza area until 1967. In 1967, the Six-Day War, I'm sure that you all know that term, Israel was attacked by the Arab countries. I have to take a sidetrack, and please check me out. Israel never initiated war against the Arab countries. Never, ever. It's always retaliation. In 1948, in 1967, in 1973, in 1982, so many wars, unfortunately, Israel always responded. Israel doesn't go to war unless we have to. And once again, I'm not yet in the propaganda section. I may get to that later on. It's easy to check. Six-Day War ended with an amazing victory. And Israel is now occupying, some will say liberating, Gaza area and the West Bank area. It's a new chapter in the life of the Gazans. Those poor refugees treated by the Egyptians worse than dogs suddenly have an opportunity. Israel is investing capital, building hospitals and clinics, and allow them to come and work in Israel, and allow them to think maybe national terms once again, because in an Arab dictatorship, if you dare to speak about your national rights, you end with the bullet in your head. In Israel, a democracy, that's the name of the game. So the Palestinians that were hoping to be a nation maybe 1948 lost an opportunity and were totally crushed by the new occupiers, Jordan and Egypt, have a chance once again to think in national terms. They will not say that, but I will. The best thing that ever happened to the Palestinians was Israel's victory in 1967. We gave them a chance once again to think like a nation. They would not admit that. But we speak about facts, still in the field of facts. So 1967 was a turning point, and now we have Israel in the Gaza area. We built some communities over the settlements, but a few things happened as well. In 1979, we made peace with Egypt. And making peace with Egypt also meant we are going to pull out from the Sinai Peninsula, Egyptian territory, and give it back to Egypt. And in the process, we asked President Sadat of Egypt, Anwar Sadat, well, since you're pulling out from the Sinai, we want to pull out of Gaza as well. Take Gaza back. It was yours until 1967. Very cleverly, Sadat said, no, you stick with Gaza. I don't want Gaza back. So now we have an area with lots of people in it that were not recognized by the Egyptians basically as a nation, that once again speaks about sovereignty, about national rights. And in 1993, Israel decides to respect that and start negotiating with the Palestinian people over building a Palestinian autonomy, not a state, and this will be called the Oslo Accords. What I'm sharing with you also includes the West Bank, the other part of the Palestinian territory, but it's not part of our discussion. When I speak about Gaza, it always almost includes also the other section of the Palestinians, that would be the West Bank that was under Jordanian authority until 1967. So Israel is initiating, it's always Israel, by the way. The Palestinians never brought any peace plan to the table, never. Israel did it 7 times. In most cases, the answer was no, without even presenting a counteroffer. You know how you negotiate. You come to the table, you say 100, you say 40, you start negotiating. Which means that what we believe to be our maximum, to give a plan for the Palestinian autonomy, that may be a state, did not even meet the minimum. That was a wake-up call. How much land do you want? Our assumption was West Bank, Gaza Strip. In 1993, Israel is initiating peace talks with the Palestinians that produced a peace plan. It was called the Oslo Accords. It started in the Norwegian capital, but moved to Washington, D.C., and President Clinton has a big smile on his face when he sees Yitzhak Rabin shaking hands with Arafat. Hallelujah. It looked like it's a dawn of a new era, because it's good for everybody, right? We were deceived. Now we know. We did not know that back at the time. The plan was simple. Israel is going to pull out from the West Bank and the Gaza Strip gradually, hand the land over to the Palestinians. We created a Palestinian entity. For the first time ever, they had the government and a way to run the businesses under Mr. Arafat, a well-renowned terrorist who won the Nobel Peace Prize, by the way. And we thought that it's going to work because it's good for everybody. It makes sense. Finally, people reason. We'll sit down to the table. We're going to discuss. Let me tell you why it wasn't working to begin with. Because we brought to the table politics and social issues. They brought to the table religion. It was destined to be a dead end. Now we know, back then we did not. Because when you speak in behalf of world jihad, you don't speak in behalf of Palestinians or a nation or a state. Read the charter of Hamas, November 1988. Very seldom it mentions Palestine or Palestinians. They speak in behalf of world jihad. It's a global issue and not a local one. It's not a state. By the way, for the Muslim mindset, to speak about the Muslim state is contradicting the purpose of Islam. Islam believes in one caliphate, that all the Muslims are fighting together. If you divide them to states, you're weakening the position of Islam. So speaking in behalf of Islam, you don't believe in states. You believe in one entity under a caliph. To speak about the Muslim country is believed to be by many of them as defeating the purpose of the Muslim objective, which is all the Muslims under one leadership. So Hamas's agenda focuses on that and not on the rights of the Palestinian people. How interesting. Everybody calls them freedom fighters. For whom exactly? If you don't even represent the people but a religion, which includes so many people around the planet, I will encourage you, read the Charter of Hamas. It will tell you exactly what they mean, and then also read the Proclamation of the State of Israel. Just by reading the document, that will tell you exactly who believes in what, and what's the plan of each side in that conflict. So now we started talking to the Palestinians about peace, which was great, and Israel pulled out from Gaza City and gave it to the Palestinians. In fact, we created the Palestinian people as people. We created the Palestinian, let's say, autonomy, and we were hoping this is going to work. So in 1994, basically, the Palestinian autonomy was officially created July 1st as a result of the Oslo Accords, and Israel, in good faith, I have to say, pulled out from a bigger part of the Gaza area. And the Palestinians seized control now over Gaza City and most of the Gaza Strip. What do you think happened immediately after Israel pulled out from these areas? Peace? You must be kidding. The Palestinians had now safe places that they could operate without Israeli forces policing the area to make rockets and to make explosives and start firing rockets into Israel. How would any country in the world respond to that? What would the USA do if somebody would fire a rocket from Tijuana into San Diego? I think that you know the answer. And we said, you know what? They're still new at this. They don't really know how to operate. Arafat is a friend. We have to support him more because he doesn't control his own people. So we gave them more weapons, thinking that he's honest and we can really work a deal here. What a big mistake that was, now we know. But now Gaza is controlled almost exclusively by the Palestinians. And things were getting even worse, and Israel decided, okay, if what the Palestinians want is all of the Gaza area for peace, and the world was pressuring Israel, you have to appease them just a little more. These are people, they need the land, it's going to lead to peace. Under a very hardliner by the name of Ariel Sharon, and I'm sure that some of you remember the name, Israel decided that we are going to pull out from Gaza completely. We're going to leave the Gaza area. We're going to give all of it to the Palestinians. Please don't say back, it was never theirs. And we'll see what will be the response. So Israel pulled out from the Gaza area. The last soldier locked the gate behind him September 1st of 2005. Ever since, no Israelis are in Gaza. Now you do see sometimes in these big rallies, people carry banners, free Gaza. From whom? Who occupies Gaza? Who are the masters in Gaza? I will say free Gaza from Hamas. That will be, of course, my view. Israel is no longer engaged in Gaza. By the way, you tell me what's wrong with the following sentence. We, Hamas, have the right to kill all the Jews in the world. Please send electricity. Please send food in. Please send medications because we can survive here. Sounds ridiculous, huh? But you know what we did? You show me in warfare another example that one party is supplying the enemy with everything they need to carry on the struggle against us. But we do that because we want to distinguish, if possible, civilians from non-civilians. We want people not to starve to death on the other side. But once you send everything into Gaza, who seizes it? And who controls it? Hamas. So even if you want to help civilians, there's no way to do that. Because everything that goes into Gaza, even today, we speak about the humanitarian aid. Thousands of trucks with food every day. There's no shortage of anything in Gaza. The problem is, as it crosses the border, Hamas seizes it. It takes it to huge arsenals. They control that, and they sell it with money for the people. It's supposed to be for free humanitarian aid, right? And who the world points a finger to? Israel. It's because of you. Well, come and count the trucks that go to the other side. And look at some air photos. Huge trucks on the other side waiting for somebody to come and take the food and distribute it. The first people to show up is Hamas. And the rest is just impossible to carry out any kind of, I would say, decent aid because there was no cooperation with the local authorities. But Israel is the one to be accused, all right, for creating starvation in the Gaza area. Well, 2005, we left the Gaza area completely, and Israel also pulled out from few communities in the northern part of Samaria. And again, if some of you know Israel's history, Ariel Sharon was not an easy guy to deal with. But under all the pressure from President Bush, for example, and it was, listen, you think that if we give up Gaza, it will lead to peace? We are willing to take a chance. Guess what happened the following day after we left Gaza? Well, now there was nobody to police anymore the area. And the locals could invest all of the resources to keep digging tunnels and to create equipment. Nobody cares about the people. Nobody cares about the well-being of the population. 2005, therefore, was a turning point, which led to another turning point, and that was elections among the Palestinians. The U.S. is always involved, of course, in the Middle East, sometimes boots on the ground, sometimes more politically. But here's the idea. We want to prove to the world, that was the idea of Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of State at the time, that Islam and democracy are not natural enemies. Arabs can live in democracy, Muslims can live, let's give them a chance. And the whole world came to watch. We said, just a minute now, if you let them go to free elections, be careful, because Hamas may win those elections. Mrs. Rice said, nevertheless, they deserve to have a democracy. The whole world came to watch. Monitors from European countries were standing by the ballot boxes to see that everything is done in a legal way. For the first time ever in an Arab-Muslim entity, people voted in democratic elections. It never happened before. It will happen once again in Egypt 2012. And guess who won the elections in the Palestinian side? 75% of the vote went to Hamas. So far, we dealt with the PLO. They were the official representatives. They were more secular in a way. They spoke about nationality. The whole agenda was religious. Hamas won 75% of the vote. Let me tell you, if you are voting for Hamas, you tell me, why would anybody vote for a group of people that guarantees the following: ignorance, fanaticism, zero right for women, zero right for children, everything that we are against? But that's your choice. Nobody forced you to. The people had spoken. We don't understand that. It's not part of our mentality. It doesn't make any sense to vote for somebody that guarantees my oppression. How do we to understand it? You understand my point? It doesn't make sense. Well, because we don't understand. It's a big misunderstanding how the other side thinks. We don't care about all those Western principles. We care about one thing. We are going to recruit all resources, give us freedoms to kill as many Jews as possible. Don't listen to me. You read the documents and you listen to what the messages are in mosques, even here in America, I'm sorry to say. So we begin to understand and to learn what was going on. And since Hamas won the elections and the PLO refused to surrender their weapons, it led to a civil war. Palestinians were killing Palestinians, and the situation ever since is that the Palestinian people are divided into two. Hamas controls Gaza, the PLO controls the West Bank basically, and we are in a way in the middle. Now that situation served Israel quite well, because our position was this, and we are willing to negotiate. But who represents the Palestinians? Who is the one to come to the table that can deliver? For that reason, they need to resolve the problems. They have to have one leadership that can deliver, and then we can talk. It was a cynical policy, I'll be quick to admit. It was very good for Israel. We want them to be separated because as long as they are, we do not have to pay any price for peace, because the idea is always land for peace. So we are for the two-state solution, but not for a three-state solution. You understand the point? So this is the situation until this very day. The Palestinians are divided into two groups which are at odds with each other. And Hamas was in a way not created by Israel, but Hamas was supported by Israel. I know it sounds ridiculous. We wanted to make sure that the PLO doesn't have the upper hand, and to do that we had to support Hamas so we can tell the world we are willing to, but since they are not united, there's no one to talk to. It's a legitimate policy, maybe not the most nice one, but it wasn't working. We always thought that Hamas is a potential partner. They really want to govern the people, and therefore want to support it, not understanding as we do now. It was never the plan. The plan was to buy quiet for a while. The plan was to deceive Israel to believe that, yes, we are a potential ally as long as you support us. We were fooled, and big time, and we are paying the price now. So Hamas's plan was never to be the government in Gaza. Hamas's plan was to fight for Islam and Muslim jihad and world jihad. And by simply fooling us, they did a good job in fooling us, because we did not fully understand the mindset as we do now. Because once again, Israel is more Western in our mentality than it is the local Middle East, and we had a hard time to understand how this logic is working. 2005 then, and then the elections in 2006, the civil war in 2007, and from 2007, Hamas is controlling all of Gaza. Israel pulled out of Gaza, but we are controlling what goes into Gaza. By the way, the whole world expected us to provide Gaza with everything they need. Why not the Egyptians? You see, there is a border over there. Gaza borders with Egypt. Our dear brothers and sisters, Arabs, how come Egypt is not supplying Gaza with anything? Well, who cares? Israel is to be blamed. And therefore Israel is willing, and Israel was supporting and supplying everything, but checking what goes in. We have the right to do so. And since the whole world said, just a minute, these people are so hungry and they'll starve to death, etc. Well, since that was indeed the case to the world's view, we gave permission to some reporters, in a minute, some reporters to come into Gaza from Egypt and from Kuwait. And you read the report in just a minute. The Egyptian newspaperman said, you can find those producers in Egypt. Gaza is much richer than Egypt, or Kuwait for that reason. And that took off the pressure some. But it's so easy to create a strong impression because nobody is checking and nobody cares about the truth. So Gaza wasn't lacking anything. Under our blockade, everything went into Gaza, minus explosives, minus whatever it takes to make a rocket. But that was the impression. So now Hamas are the new leaders in Gaza, and I think that you will enjoy to meet the new friends and the new neighbors that we have. When you read about Hamas's, the way they operate, the way they think, and again, I'm not exaggerating, Gaza is taken hostage by Hamas. Are all the Gazans bad people? I don't believe so. But how come nobody resists? How come it's just a minute now? This is the wrong regime. We need to do something because Hamas, that was elected to do something for the people, is not doing anything for the people. And if you read their charter, and I know there's a lot of information over there, well, read Article 13, for example. That's a plan. Very simple. How do you deal with somebody that tells you, I'm going to kill you? What will be the common ground for negotiations? And that's what they say all the time. The Jews will be killed. Not Israelis, not anymore, the Jews. That's the issue, all right? The problem is not a national, the problem is indeed religion. Read Article 28, for example. I'm just giving you kind of the in a nutshell, so to speak. That's a charter, which means you write a charter to show the world who are you, what you are supporting, what's your ambition, how do you want the world to see you. And that charter is full of death and violence. I encourage you to read the Proclamation of Independence of the State of Israel. And then you will see a totally different document, totally different spirit. So that's what we are dealing with. As you understand, they're not easy. How Hamas operates, I think that we all understand. All of Gaza is recruited for the effort. You tell me who is an innocent civilian if you live in a house and there was a shaft going from under your son's baby crib connected with the metro or the tunnel system that goes under Gaza. Are you collaborating with Hamas, yes or no? What if you decide to store 2 RPG rockets in your living room, so when time comes, somebody can come and fire that from your living room at an Israeli troop that goes by? Are you part of Hamas, yes or no? You understand my problem? How can you tell who is the good guys, who are the bad guys, if they don't wear a uniform? They just look like civilians. We released an unusual operation. They'll make movies about that. An Israeli girl, Noor Gamani, who was kept by a Palestinian family. The husband was a cameraman for Al Jazeera. And there was a wife and 2 kids, and they went to school. The school was open. They went to the grocery, and Hamas paid them $700 a month just to keep an Israeli hostage. Are you an innocent Palestinian in Gaza, or are you collaborating with Hamas? You understand my frustration. It's impossible to draw the line. If you use civilians, you hide behind civilians, I will say you're a legitimate target. How can you tell who is who? What about people that never pulled the trigger in their lives, but are willing to make donations on a regular basis, knowing this money is going to be used to manufacture rockets to kill Jews? Are you a bad guy or a good guy? You understand my problem. No nation in the world ever was facing such dilemmas. For example, we are accused that we are taking out innocent civilians. Here is a scenario for you, and try to work with me on this one. You see, we have good technology. Drones will show you that from the courtyard of a kindergarten in Gaza, somebody is preparing to launch a rocket into Israel. And you have 10 seconds to make a decision, because this rocket may land on the school of your grandchildren and kill him. What say you? 10, 9, 8, 7, come on, make a decision. Once again, I'm sharing my frustration with you, because there is no good solutions here, and there are no bad solutions. But these are the choices that no army ever had to deal with, except for Israel, and the whole world has something to say. You have the right to do that, you don't have the right to do that. Well, here are the new heroes and the leaders of the Hamas in the Gaza area. Abu Mazen Mahmoud Abbas is the president that nobody listens to because he's PLO. And the others are Hamas officials. Yahya Sinwar is the commander in Gaza. We took out his second in command about a week ago. And the other 2 are having great time in nice hotels in Qatar. But they those that make decisions in behalf of the poor. And I'm telling you, people in Gaza are really poor people. They suffer quite a lot. Gaza is in a terrible condition. Nobody will give money for restoration of Gaza. Because let's say that you want to restore Gaza, knowing that if Hamas is not utterly destroyed, there will be another provocation, and we are going to destroy everything that was built. Why would anybody consider the rehabilitation or the reconstruction or the restoration of Gaza? So these people are in bad condition, but I'm sorry, I'm not taking responsibility anymore. Somebody has to, but that's not Israel. So Hamas was using all the resources, of course. These are just the reports of the Egyptian newspaper that came into Gaza to see, because he heard that Gaza doesn't have anything, and the Gazans starve to death. And when you write this article, which is published all around the Arab world, that takes the pressure off, right? Because that was indeed the situation in Gaza. And Gaza, nobody starved to death in Gaza. We saw to that. We made sure they have everything they need. So every dollar that Gaza got, and they got quite a lot of money, was used for this. Assault tunnels into Israel. There is a whole system which is 300 miles long, bigger than the London Underground, all right, in layers, that was built by Hamas. Some was going through the line into Israel's communities, invested in rockets, etc. What did Israel do? Well, unfortunately, we didn't only tolerate that, we even encouraged that, not knowing what's the end game. You know the picture of the person, or the picture, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister for the last 15 years. He's about to address your Congress in a couple of days. And Mr. Netanyahu had a certain policy. And this policy that was a legitimate one turned out to be a wrong policy. It was his idea that we want to divide and conquer. We want to keep supporting Hamas because Hamas promised the Egyptian mediators and the Sultan of Qatar that they do want a long-term agreement. They do want quiet. Qatar sends to Gaza $30 million a month with our consent. We carried the cash. We carried the briefcases, all right? Because Hamas are potential allies. As long as they are promising to keep everything quiet, and they are going to maintain that division among the Palestinians, they are potential allies. That was the policy that trickled down to the ranks of the army as well. All of our attention went to Iran. All the money was spent in Israel on Air Force, on a whole system of ballistic missiles and counter-ballistic missiles. Nobody paid enough attention to Hamas because Hamas, by Mr. Netanyahu's policy, is a potential ally. Because what happened on October 7, 2023 is unbelievable. We were caught totally unprepared. It was the army's problem, definitely. But in a democracy, responsibility falls on the prime minister or the president. And Mr. Netanyahu refuses to take responsibility. He blames everybody. But him, how he's connected? You understand I'm not his fan. All right? But once again, you hear that all around Israel. That's poor leadership. You cannot dictate a certain policy that also tells you where the money is going to be spent. And when the worst thing happens because of your policy, you refuse to take responsibility. That's poor leadership. All right? I do know that Mr. Netanyahu is really admired by many Americans, including good friends of Israel. You don't know what we know. I like your term, would you buy a used car from this man? And I'm not accusing him for anything. You led a certain policy that was legitimate. It turned out to be the biggest disaster in Israel's history. And that's what we are dealing with now. So it's not just the war that goes on, it's also some local issue to try to resolve our politics as well. We'll see how this is going to develop. So since we knew that Hamas is digging all those tunnels, we started erecting fences, and there was a steel wall that goes about 60 feet on the ground to try to stop those tunnels. The water table is very high. If you go a little deeper, everything will be flooded, and we simply trusted technology, and that was a major mistake. By the way, Egypt, most everything that came into Gaza came from Egypt. The Egyptians are playing a dirty game, I have to say. They're always offended. Israel did that, we are offended. Everything that goes into Gaza is coming from Egypt's territory. All right? And the Egyptians are kind of turning aside, not really taking responsibility. Now they will have to. Because when you find in Gaza rockets manufactured in North Korea, they did not come from Israel. They can only come from Egypt. So the Egyptians for a long time decided not to block the border and to let the Palestinians to do whatever they pleased. We were deceived, and although we built this nice system, let me tell you part of our dilemmas, and please bear with me for another 7 minutes. Here is the dilemma. We built a fence, and we told the Palestinians, if you come closer to the fence, we are going to shoot you. There was a dead killing zone over there. You can't come any closer to the fence. And then a kid comes and plays with the ball and just kicks the ball. The ball falls behind the line. And he goes to grab his ball. What would you do? You're an Israeli sniper, sharpshooter. You see the kid. What are you going to do? Are you going to kill him? I don't think so. Following day, a shepherd goes by. And he has about 100 sheep. And 50 of them simply go astray into the killing area. And the poor shepherd only wants to save his sheep. Are you going to shoot him? No. And before not too long, thousands of instigated Palestinians are burning tires right on the fences, creating a smoke screen that we cannot see through, that preparing this invasion. Well, I think that we are pulling out from Gaza when the war will be over. We don't want to stay there. And there will be such a line. Oh yes, we're going to kill every kid who is going to cross the line. We'll learn the lesson. But until about 9 months ago, we thought, well, these are just people. There's a kid playing with the ball. We don't know that he was sent by somebody to see, are we alert enough? How are we going to treat this kid? So we did not know exactly what was going on. And then October 7th came, and within minutes, the worst of the worst happened. It was a perfect storm, in a negative way for Israel. We were not prepared. We had all kinds of scenarios. In 22 different places, Hamas was breaking through the fences. There were 3 waves of invasion. First of all, the elite forces, and then followed by other forces, and then simple Gazans. The rumor spread that, hey, the border is open. People took a kitchen knife and crossed the border into Israeli homes to slaughter, to kill, and to murder. Simple people, innocent civilians. I'm not being sarcastic, these are the truth. In the process, 250 Israelis were kidnapped, abducted, taken hostages into Gaza. Nobody could even dream that this is a possibility. Our retaliation was harsh and was fierce, and yes, Gaza is indeed in a very shameful condition, but what did you expect? Did you think that you can go into our territory and slaughter our civilians and we are going to limit our retaliation? We are learning. It takes time. It won't happen again. We were taken by surprise. We deserve that because we misunderstood the intention, I'm sorry to say. And our retaliation is going to leave Gaza in a terrible condition. But again, if anybody wants to point at Israel as the aggressor, well, I think that you understand that this is not the case. So when I used to tell to people that I had the pleasure to guide in Israel that Hamas and ISIS are the same, some did not like the idea, very much the same. The same MO, the same rhetoric, the same motivation, the same way they operate. You tell me what kind of an evil way of thinking will think about beheading people, killing babies, throw them into an oven and turn it on? Who thinks like that? What kind of a spirit delivers that kind of operations and actions? And they were stupid enough to film everything with GoPro cameras. You can no longer say, oh, it's Israel's propaganda, as some people do. They were proud in what they were doing. Did you know that in Nazi Germany, many years earlier, the German commanders had an order. After a day of killing Jews in the death camps, you go to the pub and you drink. You have to be drunk so you not remember what you did all day long because it was wrong. They knew that. Not in the case of Hamas, they were proud in what they did. They broadcasted it to the whole world. So it's all documented. There was a music festival that I'm sure that you heard of, and these kids were attacked. 369 were murdered. Girls were raped, and just the stories are just impossible to understand. I had the privilege or the luck to visit one of these communities about 2 days after the attack. Look how a house looks like, all right? It's not just killing everybody, he set it on fire by using special material. It wasn't just, just set a match. They came prepared. They came prepared to destroy and to kill and to murder. This was a peaceful community. The family lived there, 2 children, all were shot in their heads. And again, take this one, and multiply that with about 20 communities that were actually conquered by Hamas for a few hours, I have a hard time to even believe I'm saying that. An Israeli community was conquered by Hamas because the army wasn't there. We have to learn, and we have to draw some conclusions. But that's how it used to look like. So here we are, 290 days later, still having hostages in Gaza. 120 men, women, children. The picture is not updated, so many of those were released or died. We know for a fact that 44 of them are dead, and we suspect that more than 44, but we cannot prove that. And that will be, of course, the most painful issue that we are dealing with, and there are negotiations, etc. I'd like to stop here because that can go on and on and on. I didn't speak much about the other frontiers that we are engaged in, with Lebanon and with Yemen and Iran and Iraq and some other places. We'll need more than a short time. I'd like to play a song, if I may. And this song was recorded in the theater in Caesarea. 1,000 Israeli musicians and the hostages' families that came together to sing. It's a famous song in Israel. They gave it a new interpretation, and I hope that it will have a certain impact. So please bear with me for a minute. Is that okay if I'm just playing the song? Let's see if I can find it. I should be able to find it. All right. You read all of my secrets over there.
Thank you, Ronny. Let's all stand. Very clear. Your heart is for your people, Israel. They are the apple of your eye. Your word says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper who love thee. Give us grace, Lord, to stand with Israel. I'm not saying they do everything right. I know we don't as Americans. But we love them. We believe that you have chosen them. And I'm a firm believer you have blessed the world through them in many ways. But Lord, we pray that you would free the hostages, Israelis and others who are being held by Hamas. Father, we pray that you would work a miracle to release these people soon. We pray, Lord, that you would either save Hamas or wipe this plague from our planet. Father, we give you our love for Israel. And we pray for every Israeli that you would keep them safe and that, Lord, you would bring truth in the midst of this propaganda, light in the lies of darkness. We thank you, Lord. We ask you to be with Ronny and his precious wife as they continue on, going out to L.A. this week to continue ministering. We ask you to be with them, keep them safe. And we thank you, Lord. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you guys.